If you're a foreigner planning to live in Korea, he is a must-know. His name is Paul Carver, and he's the head of the Seoul Global Center that specializes in helping foreigners ease into their new life in Korea. So, what practical advice can he give to make your life in Korea more enjoyable?
다들 영국에 대해서 혹시 좀 아는 거 있나요? 영국 어떤 나라인지, 이동 씨?
선생님이 사는 나라.
정답.
On Heart to Heart, we hear about the organization's various projects currently in the pipeline and Paul's life story on how he ended up in this country. Our guest today goes all out to help expatriates in Korea. Joining us today on Heart to Heart is head of the Seoul Global Center, Paul Carver. Hello, and thank you for joining us on Heart to Heart. Would you like to say hello to our viewers that are watching?
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's always great to have an opportunity to talk about what I do. My name is Paul Carver. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living in Korea for the last 10 years now, 13 years total. And my job is basically to help foreigners with any problems they have with their life in Seoul. So I'm here to talk about it.
Okay, well, wonderful. It's great to have you. Thank you once again for joining us. So first of all, let's begin by talking about the Seoul Global Center. So could you give us a brief introduction of the center and also tell us about the work you do in more detail?
Okay, so as you're probably aware, the World Cup was held in Korea in 2002, and there was expecting to have a big influx of foreign fans coming to Korea, and they thought they might need to put some kind of help desk or service to help people get around Seoul, etc. So there was, at that time, they set up Seoul Metropolitan Government set up a small sort of help desk, and it's basically mushroomed from there. In 2008, we set up the whole Seoul Global Center as it is now. And since then, it's been growing bigger and bigger. In total, in Seoul, there's about 43 different facilities who are helping foreigners. And I head up the Seoul Global Center plus 10 others, including global village centers, which are located in foreign-heavy areas like Itaewon or Icheon, the Japanese area. And then we've got business center and two other smaller global centers. So.
The first step is always the hardest. But no matter where you go, no matter where you live, no matter where you work, no matter what you do, there is someone there to guide you. A one-stop service to help foreign residents in Seoul lead a hassle-free life. Multilingual counseling, business startup support, education programs, daily life help desks, cultural experience programs. Now, I'm sure that you've spoken with hundreds and hundreds of people, especially non-Koreans, through the Seoul Global Center. And I'm curious, what do non-Koreans in general find most difficult while trying to adapt to their new lives in Korea?
I think generally overall it's language problems. So people come here, first of all, either they don't speak any Korean or they speak sort of basic Korean. And although they can get by without that, if they want to sort of really settle in and enjoy life here, they need to learn a certain degree of Korean.
Right.
So one of our main programs is obviously Korean classes to help them learn the language they need to fit in or to adjust to their daily life. Beyond that, I think a lot of people are very unhappy about, shall we say, corporate culture in Korea. Sort of long hours, lots of overtime, short holidays, things like that.
Yes.
So
I would have to agree.
So those kind of things are basic problems. But I mean, over the time I've been living here, I think life's certainly improved a lot. And people who are coming, when I look on Facebook and see what people are complaining about nowadays, To me, it's like you should have been here 10 years ago. It was not so much worse, and,
Oh, I see.
and now you don't know how easy you've got it, turning into an old grumpy man.
Yeah, I mean, you gave us an example of the 2002 World Cup. I mean, back then it was like a small help desk, for example. But now, I mean, the 2018 Winter Olympics is over, but we've been hearing great things about how helpful the volunteers were and how there were so many people actually there to help out with, you know, people that were having difficulty speaking English or communicating. So, yeah, that's a great improvement, I would have to say.
If you think from the 88 Seoul Olympics to the 2002 World Cup, and then from the World Cup to now, there's just so much change from people that I've heard about from people who've been here that time.
I mean, I'm sure that you've seen a lot of positive changes as well over the years. So what do non-Koreans residing in Korea find most convenient?
I think the first thing that everyone notices is the public transportation. The buses, frequent. The buses and subways run from very early in the morning to very late at night, clean and etc. So that's the first thing that everyone notices. From my point of view, over the course of time, I've seen that we've seen Korea opening up. They've signed a bunch of FTAs with various different countries, so USA, Chile, Europe, and based on that we've seen an influx of foreign foods and other foreign products, which has made, like back in the day, if you wanted to find cheese, it was virtually impossible, right? But nowadays you can go into pretty much any supermarket and they'll have 5 or 6 different kinds of cheese that you can buy. So obviously, as I said, influx of foreign products, alcohol. We've seen big foreign chains like IKEA coming in, so you can get furniture and things like that. So that's one of the biggest improvements.
When do you feel most fulfilled while working as head of the center?
When I see someone who comes in a complete state because they're in a really difficult position, and then through our help, they're able to get out of their situation and go out the other side smiling. And I can, like last year, there was a couple of cases. I've got time to. So there was one guy. His parents had met in Korea like maybe 30 odd years ago, and they'd got married and gone back to the States and had him. And I don't want to go into too much personal detail, but his mum had got sick, so she'd come back to Korea to recuperate. And somehow over that time they'd lost contact, so he hadn't seen his mum for 25 years or so. And he contacted us and said, "Oh, I'm looking for my mum." And luckily, through a bit of work, we were able to find his mum and reunite them. So actually we do get quite a few requests of that nature from overseas adoptees, and it's really difficult to make progress, but this one case we were successful. So beyond that, there was a foreign student last year. He'd kind of made the news because he'd been disappeared for 3 days, and what happened was he'd been out drinking, and he was looking for a bathroom, so he opened a door, and it wasn't a proper door into a place, it was like a door into a cellar. So he'd opened it and fallen into this kind of ventilation shaft.
Oh my goodness.
And got stuck in there. And the only reason he was found is because the hotel was supposed to, every 6 months they have to get these ventilation shafts checked out for some reason.
Good for
so
him.
The cleaning crew came along to check the ventilation shaft, and they found him very weak, very dehydrated.
Oh my goodness.
He was very lucky because actually the crew was supposed to come the week before, but for some reason they delayed it a week. So, but then he came into the center like trying to solve, because he had to, they called the fire brigade out to the hotel and they had to cut some things open to get him out. So he had to deal with that, about how to recompense the hotel for the damage that they'd suffered.
Oh, I see.
But on a day-to-day, there's so many different cases and so many different problems that...
서울글로벌 센터장님은 항상 자기 일에 열정적이시고 외국인 주민들의 그런 어려움과 마주치는 고민들을 항상 해결하려고 하시는 분이세요.
우리 센터장님도 외국인 분이시는 게 좋고, 한국에서 살면서 외국인들의 입장을 누구보다도 잘 이해하시는 우리 센터장님이랑 일하기 너무 편하고 소통도 잘 됩니다.
Whenever a new foreigner comes to Korea, Paul's always the first one to kind of help them settle in, He always meets them at the GS, he always kind of takes them to the football and shows them around. And he's a very, very passionate FC Seoul fan.
There are 5 things that you need to know about Paul. Number 1, it was Paul who introduced me to my lovely wife. Number 2, Paul is from Yorkshire, God's own county. Number 4, Paul came to Korea because he heard they had the best plastic surgeons in the world and he wanted to look like Nicolas Cage.
Your affinity for Korea grew while traveling back and forth between the UK and Korea. So I'm curious, what kept you, coming back? What made you return to Korea? What made you come back?
Okay, so I guess to go right back to the beginning, when I was 16, my dad said we're going to go on this tour of Asia, and we set up aside about a week or 10 days to visit his friend who was working at the embassy in Seoul.
I see.
So during that trip, I went to Singapore and Bangkok and Malaysia and Korea, but it's only really Korea that kind of stuck in my mind. So I had the opportunity after my year in China to come over here in the summer, which was in '96, and did this kind of cultural experience program. So I was doing doing taekwondo.
Oh.
Get up every morning at 6 o'clock, go and run around the campus and do taekwondo for an hour, go home for breakfast and then come back and study. And we got taken on 2 trips around Korea. So one going down the west coast and then up, and then one through Gyeongju, Busan and up to the east coast.
Oh, wow.
So I got a really in-depth look at Korea at that time. And I went back and finished my university degree in Chinese. And when I was preparing to graduate, on our careers notice board one day, I saw this big poster saying, come to Korea and study for a master's degree. So I applied for this scholarship, which was given by the British Korean War Veterans Association, and along with Samsung Electronics. I applied, got it, came out here to do my master's.
I see.
2 years here for my master's, stuck around 6 months for the World Cup, and I got married at that time. But at that time, a man marrying a Korean woman didn't have the right to work, so it wasn't easy to find a job. So I went back to the UK, joined an accounting firm, worked for about 5 years there, and then had the opportunity to get posted back out to Korea with that company. Came back, worked 8 years, decided that I wanted a new challenge, so joined Seoul City government.
So that answers my question about what kept you coming back to Korea, and also, what made you stay in Korea. So I guess those are all of your reasons. So here you are, having lived in Korea for over 10 years. Now you mentioned something about football.
Yep.
Right? So I'm going to move on to talk about football, because I know that you mentioned somewhere that you would go anywhere to watch an FC Seoul football match. And I understand that as a little boy, when you were like 3 or 4 years old, you would go to watch football with your father and your grandfather. They would take you everywhere, and you've always kind of had this special passion for football. Now, here's also an interesting fact. You and David Beckham are cousins.
Right, second cousins.
Second cousins.
Yeah.
Wow. How does it feel to be cousins with, or second cousins with David Beckham?
Okay, so David Beckham's grandmother is my grandfather's sister. So, but unfortunately his grandparents got divorced at a quite young age, so I've never actually met him. It's just this kind of blood relationship that exists, but no kind of real relationship.
Oh, but you do have something in common.
Football.
Love for football.
Love
yes,
for football, yeah.
Football.
So as I said, I've never met him. Since it's quite well known in Korea that I'm related to him, every time he comes to Korea, I wonder if someone's going to like ask him about me or try and set us up to meet. So, David, if you're watching, next time you come to Korea, I'll happily play a game of football with you.
Here he is. He'll be waiting for you.
But in terms of football, my parents actually met at a football match.
Oh, they did?
So if it wasn't for football, I wouldn't be here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then my dad obviously took me along to football games from from when I was a baby, so I've grown up being used to watching live football in the stadium.
Right.
And when I had my son, obviously I wanted to sort of get him along to watch football matches as well. So we went to a bunch of football games in the UK for the team we support back there. But when we moved out to Korea, obviously on the TV at that time, they're only showing Manchester United, Chelsea, those kind of very, very big teams.
Right.
And I was kind of worried that my son would see that on TV and start sort of following those teams rather than our hometown team.
Oh, I see.
So I thought, right, I'll take you along to some K-League games. So that's how I started going along to FC Seoul games. But over time, really got into it, and now I'm a very, very passionate FC Seoul fan.
That's right.
So I've been to all the stadiums in Korea.
That's amazing.
Maybe 30 or so different stadiums in Korea. And I've watched them gone to Japan, to China, to Australia to watch their games. So.
I know. To Australia, that's like how many hours? The flight
Like
time
10
is
or 11 hours.
And you would fly all the way to Australia to watch an FC Seoul match.
To watch them lose.
Wherever FC Seoul has a game, he goes and cheers. Today, our team has also joined Paul on one of his games. Paul Carver is a major fan of FC Seoul.
It's the first home game of the season, so I came here to... I've had 3 or 4 months with no football, so I'm anxious to get out and start supporting again.
You look very different, I think.
Compared to in the studio?
Yeah.
This is my weekend gear, so...
Hey, you alright?
And he doesn't forget to get tickets for his friends as well.
Away games arranged for events and things, like he knows everything happens in K-League. Yeah, if you ask where the guy play, like which team is the guy playing for, he'll know it.
되게 정이 많은 사람이고 한국말도 잘하고 저희 학교도 가끔 와서 이렇게 강의도 하시거든요. 그래가지고 더 친해진 것 같아요. 삼촌입니다.
He says his heart still flutters the most when he is entering the soccer arena.
You know all the cheering song, right?
Most of them. Some of them are quite difficult, but most of them, yeah.
The crowd is singing with the same hope, praying for the victory of the teams they support. Will Paul sing with them soon? Who will win this match between FC Seoul and Gangwon FC?
So it's still quite early. They've shown some good play, but also a little bit lacking energy. Week of work, it's a really good opportunity to come here, cheer loudly and let off some stress.
And for me, I've been watching football since I was like 3 years old, so it's just a way of life.
Now, your term was originally due to end last year, but was extended by 2 years, I understand. Yep. So I'm sure that you have a long to-do list. Could you tell us about your plans for the remaining 2 years at the Seoul Global Center?
Okay, so obviously we're always listening to what foreigners want and need in terms of support and trying to figure out programs that adjust to the situation. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the number of foreigners is increasing and we're seeing people coming from a wider variety of countries.
Yes.
So this year we've started providing counselling in Indonesian and also Arabic. Up to last year we had counselling in 10 different languages, now we're up to 12. So the idea is that if you're feeling a little bit sad or having difficulties, you can come into our centre and sort of chat with a hometown friend and sort of over a cup of coffee figure out the problem. So. And we'll keep looking at the immigration trends within Korea to find out when other nationalities hit kind of a threshold, and we'll start providing language support for them. Beyond that, the Mayor of Seoul has identified that a lot of people, there's been a huge increase in the number of foreign students recently, but they come here and study for 4 years and then it's very difficult for them to get a job. So we're trying to figure out a way to enable them to stick around and use the knowledge they've gained while they're here to benefit Korean society.
Right.
So we have things like a job fair, which we'll have later this year, and also increasing our support for people who want to set up their own business here, so start-up businesses. And then obviously we're always looking to have different cultural programs. So one thing we started last year was like K-pop dance. So if you're interested in learning all the latest moves from boy bands or girl groups, you can come along and they'll teach you how to get those moves down.
Well, yeah, it definitely is a huge help center. I mean, you have so many different programs and try to help so many different people, not just non-Koreans, as you said, that have just, arrived in Korea, but those that have lived in Korea for some time can also go to the help center, the Seoul Global Center, for help anytime they want.
And as I said, we're always trying to develop new programs that citizens need. But so if anyone's got a great idea, they can come in and suggest something.
All right.
Actually, twice a year we get together with the Mayor of Seoul, have what we call Seoul Town Meeting. So he gets together with about 100 foreign residents, and they can let their opinions known or complain or praise, or and lots of different ideas come out of that. And I think about 60 or 70% of them eventually get reflected in Seoul City policy. So there's always channels to make your needs known.
Yes. And we're down to our final question. I'd like to know about your plans after the Seoul Global Center. What do you plan to do in the future? Do you plan to stay here? Do you hope to stay here? Or what are your future plans?
Okay. Well, as we said, I've just extended my contract for 2 years. I have the option to extend for another year. So if the work still is enjoyable and I still feel that there's lots of things for me to do, I'll probably extend for another year. And then in reality, I could extend for another 5 years after that. But assuming I leave at some point, I guess my children are half Korean, so I'll always have ties to Korea. My eldest will be going to university in maybe 3 years. My second, 5 years. So depending on where they end up at university, I may move back to the UK or may stay in Korea. Kind of got this cycling bug, so I've got half in my mind at some point I'm going to take a year off and cycle around the world. So that's on my list of things to do.
Wow, all right, you've got a lot of things to do.
I don't want to plan too much because whenever you make a plan, then something else crops up. And
that's true. But I hope that you accomplish all of your goals and your hopes, and that you continue to help people. I mean, definitely the work that you've been doing has helped Korea become a united country. And
I always say that if I'm good at my job, eventually I'll sort of do myself out of the job, because we'll help people to help themselves, so they won't need us anymore. So that's my aim. But until then, just think of Seoul Global Center as when foreigners first come to, when foreigners get a problem in Korea, normally they contact their embassy first.
Yes.
And often the embassy say, that's nothing to do with us. So I'd like people to think of Seoul Global Center as they do all the things that you think your embassy should do, but they don't. So.
Okay, so our viewers will definitely remember Seoul Global Center is the place to check out. Thank you once again for your time and for all the useful information, the very helpful information. And we hope that you get to stay in Korea for as long as you wish. And best of luck to you in everything you do in the future.
Thank you for having me.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.